In the shadows of the Middle Ages, beneath the soaring spires of cathedrals and the clanging of swords, a darker world thrived. A world where desire twisted into rituals so strange, so forbidden, they were whispered only in the dead of night. Imagine a time when the line between sin and salvation blurred, when the Church's iron grip shaped every thought, yet human nature found ways to defy it, ways that would shock us even now. This is not a tale of romance or chivalry. This is a descent into the most unsettling, disturbing sexual practices of a time long buried. Welcome to the rotten past. Picture a medieval village at dusk. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke and damp earth. Torches flicker, casting long shadows across cobblestone paths. In the distance, a church bell tolls, its mournful clang echoing over thatched roofs. The year is 1342, and Europe is a crucible of faith and fear. The Black Death looms on the horizon. But for now, life is a delicate balance between survival and sin. The Church reigns supreme, its teachings etched into every soul. Sex is a sacred act, meant only for procreation within the bonds of marriage. To stray is to risk damnation. Yet, in the hidden corners of this world, behind monastery walls, in noble courts, and even in the filth-strewn alleys, human desire found expression in ways that defied every rule. Let's begin with the Church itself, the arbiter of morality, where the seeds of hypocrisy took root. Priests, vowed to celibacy, were men of flesh and blood, and many succumbed to temptation. The confessional, meant as a sanctuary for the soul, became a stage for darker urges. Whispers of priests seducing penitents, women confessing their sins in the dim glow of candlelight, were not mere rumors. Church records from the 13th century reveal cases of clergy exploiting their power, coaxing vulnerable women into acts framed as penance. Imagine a young woman trembling as she kneels in a cold stone church, her sins laid bare. The priest's voice is soft, reassuring, but his words twist, suggesting a path to absolution that leads not to heaven, but to his chambers. These encounters, cloaked in secrecy, were not rare. In 1215, the Fourth Lateran Council had to issue decrees to curb such abuses, but the shadows of the confessional remained. Yet, it was not just the clergy who defied their own laws. The medieval world was obsessed with purity, but its obsession bred perversion. Take the practice of flagellation, a ritual that blurred the line between pain and pleasure. In the 14th century, groups known as the flagellants roamed Europe, whipping themselves in public displays of repentance. Their bodies, bloodied and raw, were offered as sacrifice to appease an angry god. But in private, flagellation took on a different meaning. Monasteries and convents, places of supposed chastity, hid secret gatherings where monks and nuns wielded the whip not for penance, but for ecstasy. Historical accounts, like those from the chronicler Salim ben Deadam, describe clandestine rituals where pain became a gateway to forbidden desire. Picture a candlelit chamber, stone walls damp with condensation, as hooded figures chant in Latin, their lashes falling not in sorrow, but in fervor. The Church condemned such acts, yet they persisted, a testament to the human hunger for what was forbidden. The nobility, too, had their own dark indulgences. In the courts of Europe, where power and wealth intertwined, sexual excess was both a privilege and a weapon. Consider the droit du seigneur, the so-called right of the Lord, a practice shrouded in myth and horror. While historians debate its prevalence, medieval texts like the Customs of Beauvaisis suggest that some lords claimed the right to bed a vassal's bride on her wedding night. Imagine a young woman dressed in her bridal finery, led trembling to the Lord's chambers. Her husband, powerless, waits in the darkness below, his shame swallowed in silence. The act was not just about lust, it was about dominance, a reminder of who held the reins of life and death. In some regions, villages paid heavy fines to spare their daughters, a grim transaction that left scars deeper than any whip. But the most disturbing practices were not always tied to power or religion. In the underbelly of medieval society, where the desperate and the destitute scraped by, sex became a currency of survival. In cities like Paris and London, brothels thrived under the Church's nose, often with its tacit approval. Prostitutes, branded as sinners, were paradoxically tolerated as a lesser evil to prevent greater sins like sodomy or adultery. Yet within these brothels, practices emerged that pushed the boundaries of human endurance. One such custom, documented in 15th century court records, was the use of aphrodisiacs, concoctions of herbs, animal parts, and even human blood, believed to inflame desire. These potions, often toxic, were forced upon women to ensure compliance. Picture a dimly lit room, the air heavy with the scent of mandrake and henbane. As a woman's eyes glaze over, her body no longer her own. Some died from these brews, their fates buried in unmarked graves, their stories erased. The tension builds as we turn to the most shocking chapter of this tale, the rituals born of superstition and fear. In the Middle Ages, the line between medicine and magic was thin, and nowhere was this clearer than in the realm of fertility. Barrenness was a curse, a sign of divine disfavor, and women bore the weight of its stigma. Desperate to conceive, some turned to rituals so grotesque they seemed torn from a nightmare. In rural Europe, folklore prescribed the use of mandrake root, believed to hold magical properties. But the harvest of this root came with a price. It was said to scream when pulled from the earth, and those who heard its cry would die. To avoid this fate, rituals involved tying the plant to a dog, letting the animal bear the curse. Once harvested, the root was ground into potions or worn as amulets, often mixed with bodily fluids in ceremonies meant to summon fertility. Imagine a woman, her hands trembling as she clutches a gnarled root, chanting under a moonless sky, her hope mingling with dread. These rituals, though rooted in desperation, carried a darkness that lingered in the soul. The climactic turning point comes with the rise of the witch hunts, a fever that swept Europe in the late Middle Ages. By the 15th century, fear of the supernatural had reached a boiling point. Women, especially those who defied societal norms, were accused of witchcraft, their sexuality weaponized against them. The Malleus Maleficarum, a 1486 text, claimed that witches copulated with demons, engaging in orgiastic rituals under the cover of night. These accusations were not mere fantasy, they were a death sentence. Thousands of women were tortured, their confessions extracted through unimaginable pain. Picture a woman bound in a dungeon, her body broken, as inquisitors demand details of her supposed demonic lovers. The truth mattered little, the accusation was enough. The witch hunts were a grotesque culmination of the era's obsession with sexual control, a purge that left villages silent and hearts hollow. As the flames of the witch hunts flickered, the Middle Ages began to fade, giving way to the Renaissance. But the scars of this era remained. The practices we've uncovered, born of faith, fear, and forbidden desire, reveal a truth about humanity. Even in the darkest times we seek connection, even at the cost of our souls. The Church's grip loosened, but the echoes of its teachings lingered, shaping how we view love, lust, and morality to this day. What does it say about us, that we are drawn to the forbidden, that we find beauty in the grotesque? Perhaps the Middle Ages are not so distant after all. They live in the shadows of our own desires, whispering reminders of a time when the line between sacred and profane was razor thin. As we step back from this haunting journey, consider this. The past is not a distant land, but a mirror. The rituals and sins of the Middle Ages, though buried beneath centuries, reflect the eternal struggle within us all, to reconcile our desires with the world that seeks to chain them. The rotten past does not forget. It waits, in the flicker of a candle, in the whisper of a confession, in the scream of a mandrake torn from the earth, and in the silence of the night it asks, "What secrets do you hide?" that history might one day judge. Explore witch hunt details, medieval medical practices,